Good afternoon. Welcome to this event Talking Business at Tech on the Air Innovation at UMKC and in Brazil. UMKC is University of Missouri, Kansas City. I'm Jason Diet, the Vice President of the Hub Group in Uninter, and I'm the moderator of this event. I'd like to thank our partners and our colleagues at Uninter, the Global Hub, our marketing team, and the directors of all schools at this institution, especially the polytechnic schools and business school who are our partners at this series Talking Business. Especially I'd like to thank our international partner, University of Missouri, Kansas City. They are very busy people, and these busy people are giving us their time, and it's a pleasure to receive the representative of UMKC in Curitiba last year and to be so welcomed by UMKC a few months ago in Kansas City. Today we have 4 international guests and 3 global ambassadors at Uninter who are gonna be with us live. So as you can see, we have many people here. I'll be very brief. Um, the event's gonna be carried out in both English and Portuguese. We are broadcasting the event in Portuguese at the Uninter channel and in English by the Global Hub channel. Now we're gonna start with a 20-minute conversation about drones and vans. And then we're going to listen from 2 engineers, very promising young engineers who are now in Kansas City. And you're going to have a round table with questions and answers. And then we're going to have our global ambassadors, and you're going to also have questions from our audience. So you can send your questions throughout the event. At a certain point, we're going to try to answer all their questions, and you're going to end at 8 p.m. Brazil time. So we have 1 hour, and we have of a lot of land to cover. So now I'm going to turn into English.
Special thanks to Dr. Travis Fields, who is joining us from the University of Missouri, Kansas City. I'll give a very brief bio background, which will not do justice to your work, but I'm doing that because we want to hear you more than we want to hear me. So Professor Fields is an associate professor in mechanical engineering at UMKC, where he's been since 2013. He's an expert in unmanned aircraft and autonomous parachute systems. He received his bachelor's, master's, and PhD in mechanical engineering, all from the University of Nevada in Reno. And he has actively supervised over approximately 50 undergraduate and graduate students. And his work is extremely interesting. A number of you have probably seen some of the brief videos showing him in the field. His work cuts across cutting edge technology and autonomous parachute systems, diagnostics for unmanned aircraft, and automated decision-making for unmanned systems. So Travis, it is a great pleasure to have you with us. Thank you for finding the time.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. It's exciting to be here.
Excellent. So I'm just going to dive right in with questions. Could you please describe the work that you do in your labs? What are the primary challenges to improving drones and incorporating aerial delivery into the mission space for them?
Sure. So we work in a couple of different areas. First, we design the aircraft themselves, primarily multi-rotor, small quadcopters, as well as fixed-wing airplanes. We do that from, the small micro size, which if I had been prepared, I have a bunch around my office. I just don't know where I put them, up to really large, 3-meter wingspan, 20, 25 kilo aircraft that we operate in the Kansas City area. Those systems we are using for a bunch of different purposes. So we take the autopilots, we program them, we put our own, Raspberry Pi computers on there to go out and do autonomous flights. We've done payload delivery. We also do a lot within aircraft control. So trying to make these systems safer for everyone, and primarily considering things like failures when you're doing aerial delivery. So if we want to deploy a parachute system, I bought a box of shoes from Amazon. If that system isn't deployed when they were dropping it off at my house, but it got caught in the airplane, what would happen to that airplane? And so trying to look at, parachute failures on aircraft, on wings, tails. If I have a box, hit the landing gear, is that going to cause that system to crash? And we spent a lot of time there developing the mitigation strategies for the control systems themselves. In addition, I also have done a lot of work in the autonomous parachute side. So if we're trying to use an aircraft to deploy the goods, how do we make sure they're going to get to the right person on the ground? And this is a lot more for maybe humanitarian relief, not something you're going to use from Amazon. But if I want to get, blood or medical supplies to someone on the ground after an earthquake, and you can't get there on roads, how do I make sure it doesn't miss? Because they may not be able to travel over that terrain. So we kind of go through all those different areas. The challenges are diverse and broad. It really depends on the application. The aircraft design, even though these things have been around for a while, is still a challenge. The flight time, the maneuverability requirements that you might have, in addition to just testing. It takes us a while to build one, and for the most part, we're going to crash it, and that causes challenges. We can't do everything in a simulated environment, and we actually spend a lot more time than maybe most folks outside flying airplanes and quadcopters. So it's kind of a good summary.
Great, thanks so much. So if you could just dig a little deeper, like what does an average, and I'm bet you'd struggle to say average, but what does a week look like for you and for your students and advisees?
Ooh, for me, I'm probably in meetings all day, every day. That's most of what I do, and working to find, writing proposals to continue to keep doing the work. So my job is to mentor the students and find the money to keep them supported so that they can keep doing the good work. But other than that, we have group meetings. So I meet with the students. I had meetings today where we're talking about their progress and trying to go over the challenges, try to go into the labs, look at their code. I go out and do tests with them. So we might go out and fly, we have one large VTOL aircraft. So vertical takeoff, it's a big quadcopter that transitions to forward flight. I go out there to try to help them fly that, primarily because it's about 30,000 US dollars. And so that is a lot for a student to crash. It makes them very nervous. And so I try to come out and help. So it's kind of all over. It depends on the weather, depends on what we're, exactly what's going on, but it's a lot of testing, a lot of meetings, and a lot of coordination.
Gotcha. So does your lab partner with industry and or government to advance drone technology and its use? And if so, how? You mentioned money, so I would imagine that you need a source of funds. So how does that work?
Yeah, so we, yes to your question broadly, we work with everybody and anybody. Usually it is funding dependent. And sometimes we're able to use use partnerships through our own internal research dollars, but primarily we've written a proposal or we're a subcontractor to support them. We did some work with a company out of Florida that was run by a former Special Forces team, and they were trying to develop boxes to carry blood. And the blood, I had no idea, has to stay within 1 degree centigrade. Otherwise, the blood is expired. And they're trying to figure out how to get that to anyone in a combat zone within 1 hour. And so we were there to help on the autonomous delivery side to try to make that possible. So it's just one example. We've also done a bridge inspection with the local Department of Transportation, where we created the multi-rotor with the camera system, worked with their bridge inspectors to go out and evaluate a bridge structure in the rural Missouri area. So we've really worked with kind of everybody all over the place. Those are just kind of two high-level examples.
So this is a question, I think it's related. The field is changing incredibly quickly, and you've described having to have a lot of different hands and be doing many different things. How do you keep up? And what's your advice to your students in what they should focus on and how they should try to maintain themselves current?
Man, that's a good question. So we are all over the place trying to think about the different battery technologies and guidance trajectories, We really are everywhere in trying to think about how to move that drone technology forward and where the challenges are going to be. I would say one of our biggest limitations is the regulatory side, and how are we going to survive and exist in the future. If we have one bad actor that takes down, a helicopter that's out on a medical flight, that's going to transform the industry in the United States and across the world. And so those are some of the things we really worry about, and how do we protect for that. And so there are a lot of new regulations that we have to worry about here. They're called RFID is one, where you have to have an emitter. We also have a couple of other different ones that are part of the national airspace as well.
Right. That sounds like society impacting drone technology. I'd like to flip that around. And the next question is, how do you see drone technology impacting society over the next period, say 5 years?
Ooh, how is it going to impact? Hopefully, well, I know we're going to see urban air mobility. That's continuing to grow. So that's kind of taking the drone world that I'm used to and growing it to human rated, capacities. That's going to be probably one of the biggest transformations we're going to see. Motors that used to be $1 that were, 2 centimeters across, that are now these gigantic motor systems and propulsion systems. I think we're going to see that as the electric aircraft and for general aviation, and that's going to transition even further to be a part of commercial aviation, getting into more greener aviation. So I think it's going to take a while, but it's going to be interesting to start from the drone world on up into green aviation.
Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on customer demand? So you mentioned, I think, a sort of an Amazon example of what happens if something gets caught. You also mentioned there are military applications or government applications. How do you think about sort of the customer side of things? Who are the customers for drones and UAVs?
Ooh, everyone. I mean, I see it as you've got the agriculture side trying to improve crop yields, whether that's monitoring, automated monitoring, to crop dusting and pesticides and treatments like that, to search and rescue, the more of like a DoD focused for reconnaissance. And we're seeing a lot going on with the Ukrainian conflict now. I think it really spans everyone, and they are different platforms and aircraft because they have such a broad mission focus. And then, as a hobbyist as well, I think you're going to see a huge part that just continues as the toy market, where they're just fun to fly. I also have an airplane that I fly, but that's a lot more expensive than just having a toy that you can wear the goggles and feel like you're in the aircraft.
Great. What's the best way for a novice such as myself, somebody who doesn't really know the field, to think about the different UAVs or drones? So I know that there's fixed wing. You said an airplane as a fixed wing versus helicopter type, or single rotor, multiple rotors. But then there's all the intelligence and the AI and payload capacity and range. So like, what are the categories? And you touched earlier when we were talking before the start of the event on the regulatory aspect. So could you just, how do you think about the technologies around UAVs?
I don't know if there is a great central repository or a way to kind of get up to speed. So I teach a course on drone operations for industrial applications, so bridge inspections, where we talk about those kind of things. But it's such a fast moving place, a field, that I don't know if there's a good website to go learn about it. DJI is really one of the main, they have the mass market appeal for aircraft. That's where most people would probably go, but they really only work in the quadcopter space. They have not done much in the airplane side. I think primarily because they're hard to operate and more likely to have an accident. So that is probably a big hole right now.
Yeah. And just the last question, really appreciate the answers before switching over to hear from Mateus. With all of those differences, and what's the business environment, what's the legal environment, and the different uses, I'm curious, do you have research partnerships, for example, with the law school or with other areas, to see how legal questions are emerging, or in other areas based on what's happening in that field, and then how that impacts or could be helped by the work that you do with drones?
We haven't so far. We've thought about that and had some initial discussions. I think it's been maybe more of a partnership that we've been trying to grow in maybe like geosciences, or horticulture, that kind of an area where we might be able to have a more direct impact, sort of avoiding the bureaucracy of policymakers, because that's, as an engineer, that's not the fun side. We like to make things and go fly them and have an impact on food production or whatever it might be. That's a little more rewarding to me. So that's probably where we focused a little more.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. We will be back to you with the roundtable discussion, and I'm going to switch back to Portuguese.
Great. Thank you.
Então, agora é grande prazer.
So now I have the great pleasure to welcome Mateus Souza Borges. I'm going to go over his bio very briefly. He's a director of Orbia.org, a marketplace director, a multinational biocrop science company who operates in several Latin American countries in the agricultural sector. He was recognized by Forbes as 30 under 30, the 30 highly promising people under 30 at that time in Brazil. And he's a mechanical engineer, graduated from the State University of Campinas, Unicampi, and he conducted research in Dr. Travis labs in 2014 and 2015 with an experience. It was an experience that inspired Mateus to think about the use of drones to support agricultural work in Brazil. So thank you so much for being here, Mateus. It's a pleasure to have you here. It's my pleasure, Jason. Okay, let's go straight to our questions. What's been the importance in practice of your experience researching drones at UMKC in your current work? Well, I think that initially when I started working with drones as UMKC, as an engineer, it was practical work in applied research and problem solving. So the time ago, I started like starting a drone from scratch, modeling experiences, and this structured thinking that helped me to uh, bring it to my first startup here in Brazil. When I came back to Brazil, we started. I didn't know how to be an entrepreneur using drones in agriculture. I didn't know how, but I found this idea fascinating. So I spoke with more than 20 investors at that time, and they would say that I had a good product, but I didn't have a good business model. So I said, okay, I kept researching, and then I found my partners, and we started this marketplace to buy and sell raw materials and try to democratize the access to technology. So trying to be an entrepreneur with drones in agriculture, how could we give access to producers to this sort of technology? With the Produtor Agro, we said, okay, we have this digital channel, we have access to some of these producers, and now we have a base with more than thousands of producers and farmers. We can take this technology over. So the work that we did, Dr. in the US, allowed me to learn technology, try to uh, get an idea from my notebook and make it real. So you talked about innovation in the lab, and the innovation is not always implemented or executed, especially in mainstream sectors. So can you talk a little bit more about the reality of the use of drone technology in Brazil, which is the leader in agriculture? So what would be the current snapshot of the use of drones in Brazil? We have two great blocks. The first one is focused on imaging, like monitoring the crops. So instead of using satellite images. You get images from a drone, and you have high resolution images. And then you can monitor with Jambadi eye, the tones of green and crop, and so on and so forth. And also helps the agricultures in monitoring on the daily basis their farms. So farms are divided into blocks. So uh, when the engineer goes with their van trying to monitor the crops, they don't get uh, in the middle of the plantation. So with the drone, you can have an overview or a big picture without the need of having to move around all the time. So that in terms of imaging. The second block would be in pulverization pesticides, liquid pesticides with drones, and then we can apply the drones. We can have use it faster. We have some challenges here in terms of the loads that the drone can carry and battery in terms of flight time. We are starting this application, and also biological defensive. So, or that, those are like insects that are natural predators of other bugs. So we are going to release the eggs of these bugs with a drone, and this population start attacking uh, the place, quote unquote, in a more sustainable way and protect the crops. So it works in the pulverizing these insects because it's a better tool than to have a annual application of pesticides. I've read at Orbi about your clients and how they can use uh, some like miles. They buy the raw materials, they receive points, and then they receive services of precision agriculture. What kind of services they can have, and how can you use in practice these services? How does it work? The farmer, when they buy like seeds, fertilizer, and so on, they accumulate miles, quote unquote. Those are just like flight miles, and they can use it in some agriculture um, services. Some more expensive service could, and even consulting focus in management for family-owned farms. Farmers can have access to all that, and it's subsidized by the industry. So the industry uh, help to the help agricultures to invest in and technologies like help they monitor uh, bugs in their crops. We have a program that the technicians go to the field and to gather information to monitor the population of a certain bug, and so that the producer can apply the pesticide at a specific uh, point and reduce the use of 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 agrotoxics, and it can improve their profitability and their yield. And they try to democratize this access using this marketplace. As I mentioned before, I have more than 2,000 producers with us today, and more we have uh, more demand for this service, and also uh, purchase of drones, and that's happening in our marketplace as well. Both Brazil and the US are leaders in terms of agriculture production and also research in this sector. As a businessman who worked in research, lived in the US, and you're a Brazilian, what can we learn? What Brazil can learn from the US, and what can the US learn from Brazil, from your experience? I think that's something that I found very interesting in the US is that the relationship with industry, the academia, the university is closer than in Brazil. In Brazil, the academia is kind of concerned about having conflicts of interest and being financed by the industry. So we have this distance, and the industry is not looking towards subcontracting their research and development. And we have companies going to the university and trying to solve some of their practical problems. Each lab had a large company that helped subsidize its costs. And on the other hand, we had the students who have opportunity to work in research, focusing in problem solving different areas. So another thing that in Brazil, we have many examples thinking about in Brazil, inspired by the US, have initiatives where the companies like Embrapa, governmental agency, and thanks to Embrapa, we can we can plant soy in the Brazilian savanna and some direct planting techniques, and that helped us to advance, and that allowed Brazil become a great powerhouse in terms of agriculture. Those are examples to everyone. Thank you, Matthias. Now let's go back to our round table. Now I'm gonna go back to English again, and I'm gonna welcome Daniel.
So much, Danielle Arcega, for being with us. It's a pleasure to be with you on the screen. Danielle was a fantastic host when I had the opportunity to go to UMKC and visit. I'll give a quick view of his biography, and then we'll jump right in after welcoming him. So Danielle's originally from Curitiba, Paraná, where a lot of the people on this event, taking in this event are. He's a 2022 graduate of UMKC in electrical engineering and computer science. And as a student, he was a real leader. He led projects to develop an automated sumo bot, a circuit slayer, and a Tesla coil switch. He also was an ambassador for the university, bringing in a lot of students and people from abroad as well. So he's successfully transformed his experience at UMKC into internships and now into full employment in his target field. So I know that that's something interesting and important to many of the students or future students who are out there. So Daniel, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Jason. It's great to be here.
Great. Well, let's just dig right in. A lot of people listening would like to achieve what you have, studying abroad, converting that experience into a professional opportunity. So what advice would you have for them about preparing for success and executing a plan to do so?
Of course. I think first thing, if you're a Brazilian, you need to learn English very well to a high standard of academic achievement. In my opinion, that's the very first thing. If you're starting a bachelor's degree in the United States, especially in the field of engineering, the technical terms are gonna catch up to you. They're challenging at days, and so definitely learn English. Also have a plan. I personally seek a specific organization to help me transition from high school to a freshman year bachelor's in the United States. And that was extremely helpful because every university has a different process of application. You will get familiar with that very soon. As soon as you start applying, you will see that the process of getting into a university in the United States is a lot different than in Brazil. And so being familiar with that process is essential for you to be able to successfully apply and look for the right opportunities. There are many universities that offer many scholarships for international students. And so it is vital that you know of those opportunities so you can seek them and do the best you can to, get the scholarships to help pay for your studies. I think one of the most challenging parts for a Brazilian student in the United States right now is to pay for school. And so being aware of all the opportunities that universities want to offer international students is a vital part of that. And so being able to know the stats, having someone that has prior knowledge on applying is essential. So proactively look for people that have studied in the US, organizations that specialize at sending students. I think that's the very first step we should be looking at, especially if you are seeking, bachelor's, master's, definitely pretty much the most proactive thing you can do.
Great. Fantastic. And I'm going to ask you one more question, because after we hear from Sue Ellen, we're going to jump into the roundtable, and I'm sure that there are going to be a lot of questions about your experiences. So the second question I have for you is, in your recorded comments before this event, you mentioned a long-term vision and a purpose that drive you forward. And what is that vision, and why is that important to you? And I know that you also have a brief video, so we can put that up when it makes the most sense. I think perhaps after you answer as a part of it would be good.
Of course. So when I was about halfway through high school, I knew I wanted to be an engineer working with some level of, helping people that need help. I think that was the easiest way to put out. So I wanted to help people that have partially lost movement of their body, help them regain that movement. So initially I wanted to work with prosthetics, automated prosthetics. So, something like a prosthetic limb that is very, fast at responding to brain waves, and then they're able to move. That was my initial thought. And so I was like, okay, how can I achieve that? And so I did a lot of research. I know of one hospital in Brazil specifically that has some level of research on that field, but it's extremely limited. And so the next best option was the United States. And so I decided to come to school in here, because I knew that was the place that was going to offer me the most resources in order to do that. And I quickly realized that it's extremely difficult to, by yourself, develop such projects. And so I started finding, ways to still achieve that. And so for my senior design project, every engineer degree in the United States, you will have something called a senior design project, which is the opportunity you get to implement a product or an idea that you have, and you're going to be paired to a team, and then you can work on that. And so what our team did was we partnership with an organization called Geeks for Kids, and we created a module. Essentially, it's a camera that can read your eyes, and that will give a drive signal to a vehicle, and it can move. So essentially, this organization provided us some of the resources to pay for that, the boards and the cameras, and we wrote the entire code to allow the camera to capture your eye movement and allow you to drive. Why is that important? Well, right now we have a girl called Macy. She has ALS, which is essentially the Stephen Hawking disability, in which she cannot move her body on her own. She can only move her eyes. In fact, she communicates using her eyes. And I brought, as Jason mentioned, a video of our prototype working with a normal kid with no disability. But if you want to kick in the video, that's fine. I can talk over it. But the idea is the kid, you can clearly see they're driving the car with their eyes. And that is essential, because we're essentially giving a girl that has no movement left the chance to be able to move again. And so I think the video will speak for itself.
Reginaldo, você, por favor, pode montar o...
The beginning of the drive signal is given by the eye movement. The stop of it, there are several layers of protection to avoid a child, to get hurt. But anyways, that's getting too much detail. But
no, that's amazing and important work, and it's great to see using technical skills to solve important real world problems. So thanks so much, and look forward to having you back on the Q&A panel. Agora é grande prazer também dar as boas-vindas para a Suelen Batista.
Now it's a pleasure to welcome Suelen Batista. She's a current study at UMKC, studying her master's degree, and she's from Recife, Pernambuco, where she studied at the Universidade Federal de Pernambuco. She's a civil engineer, and she's currently working on her master's. She was in UNKC 2014, 2015, and she did her research as a visiting study. So thank you, Swalen, for your participation. Thank you.
Deixa eu perguntar então, como
Okay, let me ask you a couple of things. Why did you return to UMKC? You had the opportunity to go in 2014, and how did you go back? As you said, my history with UMKC started in 2014, and I was received a sponsorship by CAPS, so I received a scholarship, and it was the best. I was matched with UMKC. It was the best thing that could happen to me for my academic, professional, personal experience. I broadened my vision like extremely. I spent 3 semesters here and a summer. I started in 2014 with English classes. I had to improve my English before starting my civil engineering classes. So I had support of the Language Institute here. My English improved a lot after 4 months having English classes. Then I started in 2015 my civil engineering classes, and during the summer I started working at the lab. I I love civil construction materials and sustainability. So we worked with permeable concrete with Dr. Kevin, and he was the connection that made me come back and come back as a master uh, student here. I finished my research in 2015. I did my last semester and then I came back to Brazil. I finished my undergrad and I always wanted to go back and work on my master's. So I carried on my work, and last year I actually decided that that was the time to go. I sent an email to my professor. I applied again, and now I'm here as a master student, working with the same professor at the same lab with different materials, sustainable construction materials, and it's very, uh, it's great to see this process. I had to learn English here, and it was a process. It was a progress, and it was actually very good. It's very good. Great. So you have an experience as an engineer, civil engineer, right? And you're a professor in Brazil, and you have this experience in working in Brazil and in the US at UMKC. What are the main differences in both of your experiences, both in the academic world and in your professional life? As Daniel said, the first difference is in the process of uh, being accepted at a university. In Brazil, everything is based on your grades at a specific test. And that can be very disappointing. In the US, they consider different factors. They want to know who you are, who Swellen is. So you have motivation letters, recommendation letters, my extracurricular activities, volunteer work, everything counts for you to be accepted at an American university. It's not only your grades. And I can tell you that another great difference that I can see from the US and Brazil, I think that here you have the academic advisor who works as a mentor. And before you start every semester in your academic life, you are gonna this you're gonna try to draw your plan according to what you want to do. So that's a great difference. And also research. Here, I was exposed to research a lot. I have more incentive to research here, and that makes me really happy. You can really get your hand dirty right in the beginning. I started when I was a visiting student, and I keep doing it today as a full-time student. Um, the professionally, I haven't been exposed to this, to all that. I'm doing my summer internship, but I haven't really worked. About this summer internship, it's different because for 3 months, I have an exclusive experience. I work full time for 3 months. And in Brazil, when I was uh, doing my internships, I was working like part time, like working in the morning and going to school in the afternoon and so on. And now I can be exclusively dedicated to my internship. And in Brazil, that's not possible.
Obrigado. Então, agora
Thank you, Sue Ellen. Now we are going to open for our audience some direct questions from our students. And let's start with some of the students that I had the pleasure to meet and work with. First is Andre Lopez. He studies in software engineering at Uninter. And as I can see from you and from Daniel, you went after it and tried to take advantage of the opportunities that you were presented, that you actually generated, right? Didn't, nothing was by chance. So, and Andre, I think, follows this, this line. So good evening. Thank you, Jason, for the invitation. I've worked uh, with automated vehicles like submarine vehicles. And I migrated recently to software, more specifically in data science, machine learning, and AI. And my question has to do in these aerial expressions, drones, and so on. How do you see the demand of your clients in terms of data science for machine learning and software? What's the demand of your clients? I think this is a very good question to Matthias and to Professor Travis as well. Okay, let's do the following. Let's start with Matthias, and then I'm going to get Dr. Travis. Great. In the case of AI, we use in agriculture a lot for agronomical advisory. First, you can treat the images you get from the crops, you treat them with filters, and we use AI algorithms to estimate productivity, sort of disease that you can have at that region, for that crop, because you have historical data from different crops with the same disease, and you start to doing comparisons and identified all that in the field. So I have many softwares using all that. We have a Bayer software, the very large one. It was acquired by Monsanto a while ago. It was an American startup, like it was a $1 million acquisition, and they use AI to predict disease and what's the potential for some products that you should use to fight bugs in your farm. Thank you, Matthias.
Dr. Travis, could you complement that answer, please? I know that we're waiting just for a little bit of translation.
Sure. I think from my side, what I see, AI, deep learning, machine learning is really in the swarming area. So when you have lots of different vehicles of different types, so not just airborne drones, but you have drones on the ground driving through a crop, through a field, like with what stuff that Mateus was talking about. How those vehicles interact with each other is incredibly difficult, and AI, machine learning it's the way of the future. That's why everyone around the world is spending so much time to do it. It's really hard, but the problem is so hard, humans can't do it. We need computers to be smarter, so we have to put a lot of time and effort into making them smarter. But that's what I see in swarming environments. AI is king.
Great. Thanks very much. And I next want to call Gabriela Mello, who's a student. She's like many UniInter students, she's doing a lot at the same time. She's studying a second undergraduate degree in physical education. She's an entrepreneur, and she's also got a career in sales above the quota line in the tech sector. So Gabriela, thanks so much for being here. She's also a global ambassador for UniInter, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jason. Good night, everyone. So, as Jason said, I am the co-founder of our sports training startup, and I'm also training for my first Ironman. So that's why my question will be directed to sports area. And what are the applications of this emerging drone technology on physical training or competitions in like remote locations? Thank you.
Maybe Travis, could you take a first crack at that?
Sure, I can start. I think it's interesting. I've seen both the good and the bad sides. There are many videos of people using drones because they give us video that we've never seen before of different sporting events. And there's one I can think of in particular of an Italian downhill skier when a very large drone crashes right behind him. Unfortunately, didn't hit him, but that aircraft would have caused very bad damage to that person. So I think about it from a safety, that it's going to be hard. I think if you look at the types of video and imagery that can be collected, it's going to make it easier to sell those different sports. Ironmans, incredibly difficult races, not the most popular. They're not on national TV as much as, football, basketball, whatever. But if we can get that footage that is unique, that I think will help to propel, these sports into the public's eye. Additionally, if we bring back the AI and machine learning, the information you can gather from video on how humans move is very interesting and unique. And a human would never want to analyze it, but those computers could analyze and tell you how inefficient your body is operating and how to get better. You don't even need motion capture markers like the old days. You can just use that imagery and analysis tools to tell you that, if you were 5 degrees straighter, that's 5% more power in your, cycling, for example.
Mateus, você tem alguma coisa para acrescentar?
Anything else? No, I think Dr. Fields presented everything. And I'm gonna ask a question here that we got from a UniInter professor, Professor Alexandre Francisco de Andrade, who's the coordinator of graduate studies. His question is, how the use of drones in agribusiness using 5G technologies and software with AI can help agriculture to use less agro in traditional techniques. I think maybe Matheus can try to answer this question. And if Dr. Travis has anything to add, that would be great. It's a great challenge to optimize the use of water in agriculture. I think drone is more of a more complete system, not drone only. It uses the process of imaging, and it can map the areas where you need more water, and that together with irrigation, you could maybe transform sensors that would irrigate only where we actually need more water. So at the end of the day, with the images from drones and the sensors on the field and irrigation, we could use this process and say, okay, now it's time to irrigate. This area is drier, this area is not. I need more water here or there, and we can balance and optimize the use of water. Perfect. Thank you, Travis.
Add to that?
I think that was, Mateus hit it very, very clearly. I think the aircraft ability to give us more targeted treatments is a huge way to succeed and not use as many resources. We don't have to fly airplanes to do normal crop dusting. Things like that will be a huge benefit, because right now we just do it for the whole crop because we need to, but maybe we don't if we had better sensors and information and feedback.
Great, thank you. I'm going to start just taking questions that have come in from the audience, and I will adopt whatever language they were asked in, and we'll try to point it to the best person. So we have a question that came in from Caroline Batista. Estão desenvolvendo algo para aumentar a
Are you developing something to improve the flight autonomy because the batteries are not very powerful? Matheus, I don't know if you can say something. It's about research, or Travis.
Sure, I can jump in. The autonomy and controls work is more on maybe safety of flight. The longevity or endurance is a challenge, and the batteries are a major limitation. There are a lot of new cutting edge batteries, solid state batteries have been a promise for the car industry. Is that going to translate to the aircraft world as well? And we hope so, perhaps. I think what that's going to enable is bigger missions. Maybe I can use one small drone for a very large farm as an example, that right now you have to charge a lot. But I think from a flight controls perspective, we don't really have to think about endurance so much. We just want to avoid obstacles, maintain safe operations, and collect really good data of whatever it is you're trying to collect.
And just thank you. Just a follow-up question on the energy front. So a student, Valmor, asked about the ability to use solar energy. Is that a possibility to extend the range or time for flight?
So for a multi-rotor, a quadcopter, definitely not. A quadcopter uses, on the order of maybe a kilowatt for a small drone. The size of the solar panels for that would be very large. For fixed wing aircraft, they are much more efficient. That's why we fly around in airplanes, not helicopters most of the time. That is a possibility. There has been a lot of work in the past on long endurance. The solar panels aren't quite there. It'll give you some benefits, but without, you have to make a very good, hyper efficient aircraft to really use the solar panels. For a normal aircraft, it's not a big improvement, but it's some. So we're getting there. All of these things are heading in the right direction.
Thank you. A próxima pergunta veio do Christian, Christian Garcia.
Next question got from Christian Garcia. Question is, what's the capacity in case of pulverization? Okay, Christian, what is the capacity target for a liter of pulverization for a single drone? And the answer was, I don't know. I mean, thing is, the heavier, the worse, right? Next question, I think it goes to Professor Jefferson. It's from Professor Jefferson Ferro. Is automation in the field is a risk for employability of the Brazilian worker? Matheus, maybe you can mention how the technology is being accepted in the marketplace. I think what's going on here is trying to train professionals that work in agriculture. Some research centers are starting to train employers to use new techniques. I think that uh, the use of large cultures like culture like soy and corn, they are they use a lot of technology. We got a lot of machines to plant, to harvest, and we have professionals that can adapt to these new technologies. Now, when you go to to smaller scales cultures like tobacco, coffee, we still have a lot of manual production, and we don't have, for example, to plant strawberries. I know we have some startups in California where they have the challenge they cannot find labor to work in their strawberry harvest. So they they have a better market fit, so they can create a robot to harvest strawberry. In Brazil, we have a lot of labor for this sort of crop. So the price of a robot to harvest strawberries in Brazil will be too high. So it depends on the market. And I think the trend is to labor and cultures that are more manual. Uh, I think you take longer to have the impact of automation and replace human labor.
Close to the time, and these questions are at the intersection of Dr. Travis's work and also civil engineering and Suellen. So Jose Roberto Toledo asked about the possible use of drones in rescue operations. I gave the example of Brumadinho, which was an accident, in a very bad accident in Minas Gerais in Brazil that had a lot of victims. So the question is around the use of drones for rescue operations. And then another question is around regulations and the equivalent in Brazil of the US FAA, so ANAC, and what are regulations around the use of drones. So perhaps we could start with that first one about rescue operations. And I don't know, Suellen, if you may have comments about resistance in civil construction. And I know that there are other uses of drones to look at and evaluate structural structures in civil construction. So Travis, could you talk a bit on that, and then Suellen as well?
Sure. I mean, I can start with the search and rescue question. Yes is the short answer. They are used right now. We see them, at least here in the US, often used by the police department, sometimes for search and rescue of bad people. But we've also seen cases where they've been used for mountain rescue, where it's very hard to traverse the terrain quickly. And we can use an aircraft with thermal cameras so they can operate at nighttime, and humans stand out quite a bit at night. And so you can make it pretty quick to find someone, relatively anyway. The challenge comes back to batteries and flight time. They can't fly for a long time. And if it's, somewhere where maybe there's a forest fire, you aren't going to fly drones because now the airplanes can't fly to do, tanker drops. So there are some conflicts, but in general, they are a fantastic tool when used properly and with the proper equipment.
Great. I don't know if there are any, talvez, Matheus, eu não sei se você tem alguma luz em relação a essa pergunta.
Maybe Matheus, I don't know if you have anything to add about the FAA, the Brazilian FAA. No, it's something more technical. I don't have anything to add. Final question, because you're coming to an end of our webinar. It has to do, it's for Suellen, but also to Daniel, and also Matheus, you have experience on that. What is the best way to be accepted in an American university from your point of view? I believe that it depends on what you want to do. If you want to do your undergrad, your PhD, your master's, and go after the university and the programs that this university offer, and from then try to see how is the application for each university, and have a plan. That's very important, and then apply. I think to summarize,
Final,
that's it. And Daniel, anything from your side?
Tem uma recomendação, na verdade.
I have well, I can say that there's a organization called Education USA. They don't charge anything for you to use their service, and they do some sort of coaching with you, and you tell you what you want, and they are gonna help you with a timeline. So this month you are gonna go after this. This is the timeline, and gonna give you a report so that you can know what what you need to do and what are the next steps, because sometimes you get lost and you get too anxious with a lot of information and you ended up giving up because of the amount of things that you need to do, and they make your process something more some easier to navigate. So they keep you in a certain timeline, and each university has their deadlines and so on and so forth. They help you to have this routine. And with that, I'd like to finish by thank you all for your participation, those who helped this webinar happen. We have 4 students in an hour and have a very good um, conversation. And also the mission of Global Hub is also to open the ways in Brazil from Brazil to the world and the other way around. And I think it's hard work. You have to invest, you have to plan, you have to go after. So I'd like to thank you all.
And thank you, UMKC, for being a great partner and for receiving us so well there. We hope that you come back to Curitiba and other parts of the Brazil soon, and particularly when you're cold and your hands are freezing as you're flying your drones in January and February, know that there is a warm corner of the planet that would be delighted to help figure out flight paths. So muito obrigado. Thank you so much for being here, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you so much.